Hi, I'm Dawn Batts. Welcome to Detroit Founders Roundtable. We're here at Newlab, Detroit at Michigan Central with 4 founders building real companies, real technologies in Detroit. I wanted to take a moment to introduce the founders. We have Ron Butler. It's nice to see you again, Ron, the founder and CEO of Energy Storage Safety Products International. ESSPI develops safe, efficient solutions for battery transport, storage, and charging. Good to see you, Ron. We also have Brittanie. Hi, Brittanie. Brittanie turns food waste into sustainable materials. Can't wait to hear more about what you're going to share with us today. Justin, we've been together for a long time. Justin is the founder and CEO of ConStrat AI. ConStrat uses existing systems to transform scattered data into actionable intelligence. Looking forward to hearing more about your company. And then, of course, we have Crystal Brown. She is the founder and CEO of CircNova AI. They leverage their own unique AI Nova engine to generate, analyze, and identify circular RNA for therapeutic development. And that's a mouthful. So I can't wait to hear that. Welcome. Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. So we've had, individually and collectively, we've had a number of discussions over the years. And so it's nice to bring everybody together to just hear a little bit about your origin story, to hear about your why Detroit. So we'll go through all that. Ron, I want to start with you.
Yes, ma'am.
When we talk about origin, you have a really interesting story. You were a former firefighter, right? Ironically, in full circle, now you're developing solutions to kind of deal with how do you prevent accidents or fire. Can you tell us about how did you get to that and your why? What was that moment that you said, okay, I need to build?
Let me start with the why first. So we got involved in this space kind of out of circumstance. I was writing a blog about battery safety, and someone from a local large OEM, 2 letters, reached out and said, "Hey, I see you know a little bit about battery fire safety." I said, "That's exactly it. I know a little bit." They said, "Well, how do we get through this? We have some challenges. Can you help us?" Well, we can learn together. So fast forward 15 years and we're involved in the space. We're very unique in as much as we are the only ones really involved in the space. That doesn't last forever. We drew the attention of the federal government through US DOT, PHMSA, and they funded us through 4 rounds of product development research. We are now moving into commercialization. Why Detroit? Hometown. I want to see Detroit and Detroiters win. Every opportunity given, I want to see us win. And we're not always put in the best possible position to do that. So I want to develop my companies here. We have a new company going online next week. So
Can you tell us?
I can.
Okay,
So,
I'll come back to that, but I just want to make sure you can reveal that.
Absolutely. I'd love to talk about it. But we're building here because Detroit to us is like a blank slate. We have offices in other cities, and it's not as easy to navigate for us. Whereas Detroit, we know the inside and out, and we can do whatever we want.
So, people come up with all sorts of ideas. I swear to you, I came up with the cart, the luggage with the wheel. That was my idea. I swear to you. But I didn't do anything with it. So I didn't pick it up, right? So at what point, Brittany, I'll ask you this question because we see food waste all the time. At what point did you pick that up and said, I need to build this and I need to go forward with this?
Yeah, so primarily it came out of my background in environmental science and toxicology, studying the harmful effects of microplastics and other chemicals, and at the same time seeing the damage that food waste has on our environment. And so because of my background, trying to focus on, taking stuff from the lab to the field and having real world impact, that's really how Ecosphere came about. And with talking to some other companies in the space, they don't really want to do the waste management, the stuff that we really need right now, which is basic infrastructure for sustainable materials to be able to consume and develop here in the US. And so that's where we come in. We kind of fill that gap so that we can support not just, local manufacturers and designers, but really broadly, the states all over where people are innovating in this area. And so food waste has a lot of high value to it, and we're just throwing it out. And so, yeah, it's really just I saw a problem and wanted to fill it.
When you saw that problem, was that problem because of your space, like it being in Detroit? Like, is that, or do you feel like it's more local, or did you see it at more at a national level?
Well, I initially saw it national because it's a global issue. But here in Detroit, just being from Detroit, I came back to Detroit in 2018 specifically because I wanted to make an impact here in the community, be a resource for other people in the space trying to solve environmental issues. At the time, didn't know it would be related to food waste. I thought it would just be cleaning up the environment some other way. Maybe developing some other hard tech tool to clean water, things like that. But food waste kind of just fell kind of right in my lap, just being at the university and then connecting with people that are already in the space and seeing what their challenges were. So really starting here to make the impacts, but really, the issue is global. So
That's interesting because both of you said that it fell in your lap. You happened to write a blog, somebody called you, it it fell in your lap while you were at the university. Justin, did it fall in your lap too as well?
I would say it all started when I was 5, but it really did start when I was 5. Like I grew up on the west side of Detroit. I was a third generation entrepreneur, watching my father, my grandfather with their own construction company. And was very successful. It's the largest minority owned asphalt paving company in Michigan at one point, Turk's paving. And, I can remember having a dream of that being my future. And then it all went away. Like had major contracts with all these organizations. And I can remember it just dying overnight. And I can remember even when I was going to college, I still wasn't sure I was going into chemical engineering or something else. I had an uncle who worked Silicon Valley, taught me into going into computer science. And went to college while I was playing football in computer science, did the tech thing. But every summer, I always stayed in construction because that was always something that was ingrained in me. My grandfather stayed in the industry for so long. Went back to school, got my master's degree, and spent so much time at construction market. I think I went back because I was trying to answer some questions from my youth. And so I spent 15 years here in the development part of my life. I even worked on projects here at Michigan Central at the train station, one of the first contractors in the building. And I learned a lot of things about what happened to that business early on. And I learned just about construction market being something I wanted to be able to fix, to be a part of the problem. We are part of the solution. $2 trillion GDP, yet, every year $280 billion is lost to financial intelligence, or being a part of the city of Detroit. And my first startup, my first tech company, which was in the waste and asset management space, which me and Rick could talk about, eliminating illegal dumping, but doing it because I wanted to be financially responsible. So everything was always geared towards finance. And, I was looking at that problem, that solution. I was still in operation. I was like, still not making a lot of sense. Like, if you give people data and you think they're gonna make better decisions about their finances, that's not necessarily the case. What I learned was needed to dig a little deeper. So double back, started another company. But over the last decade, I've been in the venture space and just maneuvering and learning what fundraising looks like, what building a team is like. And I wouldn't necessarily say if I fell in my lap. I knew I was always gonna be an entrepreneur. And even when I was working, in corporate and I was able to help support a company for so long, even the people I worked for knew I would eventually leave. And at that point, I was doing a lot of consulting. And the question was, how do I consult at scale? And I think the way to consult at scale is to build it through tech. And, I've been very fortunate enough to, work with a lot of contractors. I call it blue collar tech because it's the fabric of our country. But I'm really fascinated because here in this next onslaught of ConStrat AI, we're not just looking at traditional solutions to solve major problems. Like you think, hey, give people an accounting platform. Accounting is a multi-billion-dollar industry, even in the construction space and the manufacturing space, yet the problems are pervasive. So this really comes down to behavior. So here's an opportunity for us to really leverage technology and understand and study the behavior and habits of blue-collar individuals, and then deliver solutions to them that doesn't require them to do more of their work, do less, and remove the ease and the burden and the anxiety of financial intelligence, right? So we're excited about being that right along with them. First in the construction market, then we'll get to manufacturing. But when I talk to contractors, I see my father and I see my grandfather, and I see an
Okay.
opportunity to do the things now that I wish we'd have done then. But obviously with technology, 2026, I'm in a better place and excited to
We'll lay the groundwork.
There we go. Lay the groundwork. There we go. Yeah, absolutely.
That reminds me of when you used to do consulting. When you first started, like how you entered into some of the space. But you, question. Justin talked about his role models, and who influenced him very, very early on. Who are your role models? Particularly in this space that is highly unusual to have a woman and a Black woman in that space. Who are your role models? And what made you decide this is for me to pick up?
Yeah, so more along the lines, I think, of Brittanie and Ron is kind of fell in my lap just in a very different way. I had gotten an opportunity. So I was in automotive manufacturing for 15 years. Thought I was climbing up the corporate ladder, was making the moves to do that. And while I was in corporate, I had a good friend of mine ask me if I could help her family friend out with her startup. I didn't even know what a startup was. And I said, what do you need? And she said, oh, I just need somebody to keep the books. And I said, oh, QuickBooks, I can do that. And that was my first introduction into what is the startup thing. I understood small business. I understood corporate. I had no idea what this whole VC backable startup model was. And so I ended up working for a woman by the name of Mina Soot, who is really a pioneer here in the state of Michigan in biotechnology. She was raising money as a woman of color before it was really heard of. And she was gracious enough and thoughtful enough to make sure she was giving back, as she was making a lot of power moves. And so she taught me about venture. She taught me about startup. She taught me that you don't have to have a degree in biotech or biology or chemistry to be an incredible businesswoman at it. And so she became really not just a role model, but very much that North Star for me to say, okay, if she can do this, then I can too. So, to me, we talk about like the why Detroit of it all. I grew up split between Saginaw and Detroit. So love our city, but more than that, I just think there's a heart here of identifying where there are gaps and how we can fill those gaps in unconventional manners to make really huge strides.
So I'm gonna get real personal with you all now.
Let's do it.
You
I'm
want
gonna put it on. Let's do it. Let's
to
do it.
give me all the good answers, like
Yeah.
which is good. That's good. But what part of this journey in yourself is your company testing? Like everything you said is cool and all, but really, I know entrepreneurship is difficult. It is sometimes a very lonely ride. And if we were hanging out somewhere else, what part of that journey? It is just.
I'm gonna say, and I wonder if you all agree. Brittanie, I don't know if you're a parent yet. Now, it is so close to my child. It is my child. It requires 24-hour thoughts. You know how even if you're not with your child, they're in the back of your mind. That's CircNova. I never forget it. It's always lying underneath the surface. It needs constant nurture. It needs constant care. You cannot treat it like anything else because it's very different. It is. I've always thought that leading people is very close to parenthood, and I believe that's why I was a young mother. I was a teen mom. Anybody knows my story, I think it was my preparation for being a CEO. Limited resources. Can't trust anybody. You're on your own. Now, how do you make something really, really amazing out of low expectation?
You would expect that all of us at this table understand that, but to have it framed that way is new for me. Very unique perspective, and it is your baby. You suffered, you win, you lose. It's all on your shoulders, but you're going to make it.
You're gonna make.
And just like you do with your children, and it takes every little ounce of you to get to where you need to be. You often forget about how much you've put in and how much you have left to put in. But the reward is great on the back end. I love that perspective.
That's a fascinating question. I would say being an entrepreneur, like it tests like your ability to be 100% responsible, 100% accountable, and then still be 100% dependable on team. Like it's as a leader, you are everything stops at you. You make every decision. I mean, you're accountable, even if you don't make decisions. You are the face of the organization. At the same time, I think it's important to realize we can't do it on our own, right? And how do you be a leader? How do you be accountable for everything? How do you be responsible for everything? But then you learn to be dependable, be depending on other people, and build a team, a small team that has to do the work of many, right? And I think it's a fascinating thing. And I've said this, and I've had conversations with founders, and we talked about it, being an entrepreneur, man. If you go back in corporate America, I mean, like you go, you leave.
Can you? I don't think you can go back.
But you leave for 3, you go back with 20 years of experience, right? And like whether you put me in the financial sector, you put me in operations, you put me in project management, you put me in engineering, I'm going to have a role, I'm going to have an impact because over this time you had to manage people, and people are departments in a small business. You don't have 100 people, you have one. But that one person has a department, they have a role, right? And I think it is a fascinating question. I think I might ask myself that again later, but I think every day you're being tested. But man, I am so used to, if I have to do it, I have to do it. If I have to deliver on it, I have to deliver on it. And one of my mentors taught me about highest and best use, and like your zone of genius. And using the word genius, I don't want to make it seem like I'm the smartest person, but that's not it. It's not about ego. It's about what is it I do well that I do easy or I do impactful that I can only do. And then what are the things that I don't do well I need to hand over to other people? And then what are the things that I'm good at that other people can actually do it? Like I think figuring that out is part of the journey of entrepreneurship, about really having that balancing act between like controlling everything, being in control of your destiny, but also being free to lean on people you need most, as whether it be mentors, team members, colleagues, whatever it is. So.
Yeah, but that's interesting because about 2 years ago, I led a study called, the emergence of a Black tech ecosystem.
I remember that.
You know, I remember that. But what came out of that is this whole concept of hustler, founder, CEO. It was trying to, actually, you did a.
I did. I remember that. Yes,
you did a panel before.
I did.
But it was all about how do you
How to make
move,
the transition.
Yeah, from being a hustler, Detroit hustle harder, all of that stuff. But how do you really move from being that hustler, making it all work, to being that founder? Even though we all say CEO, all of you are founder, CEO, founder, CEO. Yeah. But actually that transition to CEO, like where do you feel like you are in that transition, Brittanie?
I don't know. I still feel like I'm in the hustle phase. Like,
but
definitely slowly but surely, like delegating more to other people. Because we're all busy. We need to. That's part of our job as CEOs in the future, or if we want to say like, just having all these departments and then we're the CEO, like we need to be able to delegate. So yeah, trying to figure that out. I'm very much like, my huge challenge is just being on all the time. So definitely I'm looking for someone.
What does on mean?
Like, well, I'm naturally an introvert. So like just taking all of my energy to then, talk about the business, but then be excited while doing it. Even though I know like I'm super excited about Ecosphere and the possibilities. It's just, you have to also get people to believe what you believe inside. So emoting basically is kind of a challenge. It's always been a challenge for me, but really just, being on, emoting and excited all the time is, especially when you're doing everything, is a huge challenge. Yeah.
The on of it, I think, is like so interesting. Like two things. Justin said the genius of it, right? I noticed that in corporate, we don't use words like that. In startup, we use words like genius and brilliant. Have you ever noticed that? And in corporate, those words aren't encouraged. Yeah. They are more thought of as arrogant or cocky. In startup, those words are encouraged. And I think it's important because it shapes your mind. The minute you can accept, oh, no, I might be a little bit of a genius. I'm kind of brilliant. Then you have the confidence to bring off what we're all here sitting at this table trying to pull off, and the on of it. I think you laughed because that is something all the time. It's like, am I going to be on today? And it's the whole thing. So
knowing Brittanie for a while, I can literally understand that comment because like just getting to know her and thinking about how many times I walked on the table and she's like working, but she turns it on.
Let me see your arm.
I don't even know how I come off.
Yeah.
Brilliantly.
Yeah, there you go.
Genius. I think you're right. Accept it. And that becomes part of your lexicon. You use the word every day. That becomes part of your interpersonal culture. It becomes part of your company culture. And from a leadership perspective, I was fortunate to go through the fire department and then teach at public schools. And we have a position we take. When you're late to the fire, people die. When you don't know your job, people die. When you don't do your job well, people die. So I export that to my organization. And it's never as close in as that, but I think the lessons learned have value. So you need to do your job. I need to be responsible and accountable for when you do and you don't do your job. We meet our roles. I am fortunate. We're a small company of 15. We have one thing I've done well is brought in team.
You're the best recruiter.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
They are outstanding. We've gone to greater heights consistently, and it's not because of me. It's because of the process. So we learn.
So you all brought up a good point. So we're talking about the team and how to move the team, but you also have deep technologies, right? What does it mean to build critical technologies? Here, space, place, whether it's Detroit, Newlab. What does it mean to build critical technology? And then how are you doing your community? So I know you're known as the mayor of Newlab. But how do you?
That and $5 gets me a cup of coffee or Starbucks.
Yeah, I see you get free coffee there too.
Yeah, I must be the best man on the planet.
So what does it mean to build the critical technologies here? And then how do you also, in doing that, how are you building your communities?
I'd say, my office is right upstairs. Our office, and I was just talking to my co-founder, head of engineering, and one of our developers, because they're working on some really important things. We're having an event here. There's some contractors come in and test out the software. I would say environments like this are great places to merge technology with community. We have so many people walk up to this building, and the great thing about innovation is that a place like Detroit, where you're solving solutions that are going to impact communities, they're going to impact neighborhoods, they're going to impact businesses that sit in communities, and the idea that you can walk up to anybody and Detroit is a very personal, and like I can pick up the phone and call and, hey, I'm doing this, and they'll answer. And they're hungry for new ways to operate, new ways to work, new improvements. And we've got this chip on our shoulder here too, where it's not, if you're doing something, we want to support you, right? And I'm talking about just amongst our communities. We want to support that. And the great thing about us is when I travel and I get to meet people, everybody's from Detroit. There's so many people who are so talented, who are in these major corporations all over the U.S., all over the world, who started here, and they learned that humility and that grind, and they took that and they made it into something polished they can use. But I think it started with that humility of, I'm from Detroit, Motor City. We're right there on the border of, with South Detroit, what they call it. And you grow up in this environment where everybody thinks that like, man, I can't even go walk down the street in Detroit. I can't do all these things. And it's always this us against Detroit mentality. I think we take that into innovation as well, right? And not that we try to be confrontational, but just that take care of our own. We want to take care of our own. We want to support each other. I think our communities enjoy being a part of what's happening here at places like Michigan Central and Newlab. I think it's a breath of fresh air. So I'm excited, just to be able to lock arms with individuals, see other founders. I see Ron and Brittanie and Crystal and other people walk in the building, and I know everybody's got busy days, but that's just to stop for a moment and have a free cup of coffee with the mayor.
Oh, the mayor.
Yeah. I'm gonna make sure I put that on your tab. I'm sorry. I just think there's no place like Detroit, and people who go other places will say that, like character-wise, individual-wise, this is a great place to build community. It's different. It's different. It is.
And without the opportunity to go to other cities, like we just opened up office in Chicago and then Atlanta, they all bring something very special to the table. But Detroit brings something different, and I think it is that mentality that we're in it for each other, and given the opportunity to support everyone when they ask you for help is why I come here every day.
Yeah.
Hey, I need 5 minutes of your time. Can you walk me through this? Well, I might not know it, but let's talk it out.
And I think often when I travel, I hear one of two things. Either people are from Detroit and love it and understand the grind and the grit and the hustle harder, where it's very, what type of, how are you building that type of company in Detroit? And so whenever I'm outside of the city, I'm very defensive when it comes to our city because there's so many unexpected new technologies, like the things that are shaping the world today, they don't expect a lot of times to come out of the city. But I know what's been born out of it. When I look at what we did in automotive, when I look at what we done in music, I'm always like, oh, we're on the
Furniture,
furniture. Like,
yeah.
we are on the forefront of so many technologies that shape the world. Y'all just like to sleep on us, and that's okay because we have chips on our shoulders. We are underdogs and we love it. And I think that's what allows us to go from hustler to founder to CEO. Like, I think it's because we never lose that hustle. You can tell people who are from Detroit, from Michigan, we just have a different way about us. I don't think we're easily, it could be a lot of different things said, but I don't think we're easily scared. I don't think we're not up for a challenge. I think we're up for a challenge and we welcome it, and that's what makes us stand out from the rest of the country.
I mean, I think we're, a city of builders, and so you build the company different, right? So WMC is more resilient, I think, anyway. It's like how we're able to build with minimal resources in many cases compared to if you were in other states. And so, yeah, it really shapes how our companies are formed. At least on our end, definitely integrating the community. So like, us working with local designers, manufacturers, artists, bringing people into this space as well has been really cool. Bringing people to Newlab and kind of having them see the ecosystem that, there's other stuff going on in the city, other potential collaborators. So I really like that aspect of what we do is, we're here, but then we're also out there, talking to people, getting our materials in their hands, getting feedback. So yeah, I feel like there's really no other place. Like if you can make it in Detroit type of thing, they can probably make it anywhere. So that means like,
So you mentioned you find yourself explaining to folks around Detroit. Have you had to explain to like investors?
Yes, very much so. I think especially in biotech, right? Historically, it's been done on either one of the coasts, specifically the East Coast and Boston. They really shaped biotech for the rest of the country. And then the Bay came in and they did it differently with a different sense of urgency. And I think the rest of the country kind of was looked at as like they don't contribute. If you want to build this type of company, you start it here and then you take your behind out to the coast. And one thing I'm very intentional about with CircNova is making sure that we stay a Detroit, Michigan company. Now I go all over, but what I have to explain to investors is, what are you concerned about? So first I try to get some questions from them. The minute they say, which normally I'm met with, you can't build this type of company in Detroit, why? Why do you think I can't? Is it because you don't think we have the talent? Because let me tell you my talent. Is it because you think we don't have the capability to build this tech? Because we absolutely do. So what is it other than some kind of preconceived notion that makes you think that we are not on the forefront of technology? And then I always point to Motown, Ford, all the different things that's shown the world. Every time you found us out, we're doing it. So I'm a different kind of founder. You don't want me on the East Coast. You don't want me on the West Coast. You want me changing the world from Detroit, because everybody's going to remember that. And once I'm able to speak to them like that, I think they understand that there's also a different heart that comes with this company. There's an intentionality that comes in making sure that we're going to make strides.
That's very, very helpful and insightful. And we have to keep doing it to make sure we get more capital here, more companies supported.
We're working on it.
Yeah. I mean, we need some help, but
resources.
I see things changing. I mean, I remember again when I went to work for MENA, that was 12, 13 years ago. I remember the state of venture capital back then. I was very much in a supporting role. A lot of my current investors knew me when I was keeping the books at Gemfire. So they didn't just meet me when I started these companies. They've met me. Some of our bigger ecosystem players have met me when I was just keeping the books. When I look at where we've come, this table didn't exist 12 years ago. That's just the truth. It just didn't. I might know Dawn in passing, but we were very few and far between. When I look at the resources that are trying to be built, the funds that we do need, we need larger scale funds so that we can support these types of companies. But we're moving in the right direction. And I have every reason to believe that I think we're going to play in some other industries that the world doesn't expect. And biotech's going to be one of them. Just watch.
Can we stress that out a little bit? The funding coming out.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's talk.
So I've learned, especially recently, that money can be on the table. And this is more of a critique, not a criticism of our ecosystem. You know this better than anybody. That the money can be there. The question becomes, are we willing or ready to receive it? And parking that money here, large sums, is challenging. Because what is it? Is it the fact that we've done things a certain way for the last half a century with automotive that we're so locked into their, very rigid process that goes up a flagpole and then the approval is made and comes back down? Who here can make the decision about whether or not we're going to take this $75 million, push it down to founders? Who's going to manage that? And I wonder if sometimes it's not fair.
I heard that.
I know that, but I already made your introduction. So I wonder if there's a psychosis that is embedded here that prevents us from moving ahead at warp speed, or if it's just process.
I think it's like the mentality that we're a flyover state. I don't think that is necessarily so much negativity. I think we have to continue answering the why. Why should Michigan? Yes, we can. And I think a state who did this really well was Indiana. Indiana did this really well. They were able to get like a federal tech hub because they found an industry that worked really well. They got a lot of corporate partners to come in. They created a lot of jobs. And I think we're on that track here. We just have to, as we talk about community, we have to continue building more and more people like this in the community. Like I said, this table would not have existed 10 years ago. It needs to be bigger. And it's not just about representation. It's about making sure like the funders are here as well as the founders. That's what it takes.
So the money's here, Crystal. We've got some coming in,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think the what we're seeing is the challenge is here. I want to work with you to get this pot of money, right? Are you ready to receive it? And I think that flips
That
it.
is a very, I mean,
And because there's different type of money, right? I call it the capital continuum. You got to make sure the money is aligning with the need. Because I was just in a workshop, well, not a workshop, but we did it was kind of like not a round table, but more of a group talking about money. And someone was talking about bringing more money. And by far, you were there. Yeah, by far the audience, particularly the funders in that particular room were saying, you know what, you can give us more money, but we don't have the infrastructure. To do, or we are, we may be, in order for us to deploy that type of money, we are also taking higher risk, and who's going to back our risk? So understanding what type of money is needed and the infrastructure we need to build in order to do that, I think is also a key part of that.
I'm learning.
So, and when I said earlier, I love like this Detroit community thing, I was not talking about resources. Yeah, my first company, I did most of my fundraising outside of the state. Second company, learned a lot more about what's here locally, and I do think there is a considerable opportunity for growth on the fundraising side. But I also think the problem is a little bit bigger than that. I think the bigger problem is legacy business. Like, I think you can throw so much money at businesses here. The problem I would see if I'm an investor outside is if I bring the money here, how is the money being spent? Because the flywheel doesn't necessarily function the way it should be here. Let me get an example. Several years ago, supplier diversity was a big deal. You would get a supplier diversity report from every major organization in the U.S., specifically here in Southeast Michigan. You would celebrate how much money you're spending. Well, EEI has changed quite a bit, but innovation is growing in the Detroit market. You have massive organizations, and we have zero commitment, very little to no commitment, spending money with startups. I'm talking about contracts. So if we only talk about fundraising and we don't actually talk about infrastructure, which means that what are the problems that we can solve here with the economies that we have and make sure these businesses have contracts where they don't always just use other people's money, it becomes a disconnected conversation. And so if you look at Wayne County Airport Authority, one of the largest airport authorities in the United States, DTE, one of the largest privately owned, one of the largest utility companies, we have major OEMs here, right? You have major healthcare here. If we look down at reports, how many of them are saying we're going to commit to spending this much money with this segment of businesses? Because if we don't have that type of infrastructure, that type of circular economy, then if I'm somebody that's bringing in a major fund, I'm going to say if I bring the money here, in order for this to be executed on, it's got to leave anyway. So why stop it here?
But do you think it's just that, or do you think that it's also something to do with the fact that if I'm a coastal investor, I know I can just get that company up and leave, even if it's going to be a legacy company. I know they know this. This is not, a secret. I know that if it's a Michigan company that's poised for high potential, high growth, I can get them to move because it's easier for me to get you to move out of that state. So where does the partnership come between, again, founders who are building these types of high growth, high value companies, and then the funders, and then making sure the infrastructure is in place, because it's just too easy to say, we'll just move certain, like it's easier for them to take us out of the state than them to come here and put these resources here. So how do we attract that?
Well, let me ask this though, and then this is the way I want to answer it. If you put $4 million in venture capital in front of me, or you put $4 million in contracts in front of me, and you say you got to move to which one of these places is gonna give it to you, I'm taking the contract.
I'm taking the contract
So
too.
the reality is that people will leave because the fundraising exists because they think the opportunity on the other side of that is contract.
But they work in tandem, because if all you can do is have availability for biz dev and making sure that you're getting supplier contracts and that, but you don't have the large scale funding to back it up so that you can sell, you're still at a disadvantage.
I 100% think you need both.
You have to.
You need both. I'm just saying that Michigan, the economy, the problem is not the money's not here. I'm talking about we're looking. A lot of times we're looking at direct capital from these venture firms or whatnot. When I say the money's here, there are a considerable amount of billionaires who came out of Michigan. Number one, there's a considerable amount of headquartered businesses that still live in Michigan. There's a considerable amount of large public companies that are headquartered in Michigan. And I'm saying until we get out of this goes back to Ron's point about historically you go up the flywheel of procurement and then the ants come down. That doesn't just work for approval for money, that works for approval for contracts. And still we get out of that conundrum, then of course people are gonna leave. Because if you look at even the unicorns that have come out of Michigan, if you look at where they got most of their sales,
it wasn't a mission. It was not a mission.
So
I agree. I just think when it comes to the money is here, the money is there, I hear it on what type of money, right? So again, in my world, in my industry, yes, there's a whole lot of money in Michigan. There's a whole lot of money in Boston for biotech. It is very conservative and very traditional. So if you're not developing an asset, you can get funded out there, but you're more likely with the tech bio company going out to the West Coast, right? So what kind of money is here in Michigan? And is it risk averse? Is it risk friendly? Is it going to help drive?
question. Guys.
I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, because I was about to ask you question about growth, because you're really talking about growth, right? At some point, you gotta grow, right? You started, we got the idea, but we do have to grow. And how do we grow? A lot of times, like you said, people are looking for the venture. There's a place for that. Obviously, you shouldn't have cab when you're building stuff that, particularly that has a very high capital, intensive. But at the same time, it's like you're really building this stuff to sell it to somebody, and you're right, some revenue at some point. So as you want to think about your growth, you're past the idea, you got all of that. What has growth been? What has been that experience of you trying to grow?
Man, I would say sales cycle. I would say getting a lot of the things that I'm talking about now are based on how long it's going to take to get to procure, right? And that is a funny conversation. I say growth is how do you balance adding team members and improving your overhead with limited visibility to what your sales output looks like. I think it's a balancing act because you do have limited funding here, and until you get to a point where you be self-sustainable, you're always fundraising as a CEO, which means where you're going to get the money. And you're getting the money from here, you're getting on the plane and you're going elsewhere. That's the reality of it. I think that's going to be continued. At least for me, I think a lot of founders will say it's a balance. It's a sensitive balancing act. In a perfect world, I would love to just have a limited amount of venture capital in a company and everything else based on timing. The reality is, though, the other part of this that the competition not doing that. And we're gonna have a conversation about the Black founder, and we talking about where we have conditioned ourselves that we got to get everything out the mud. And I remember when I raised my first round, and I say the words that I tell founders never to use again, and you say this in front of venture. If I could just get this, we have this, if I could just get this, because we think we get this perfect amount of money, then everything will work out perfect, and boom, it never works that way. Our competitors, a lot of them work in surpluses, right? They have a certain amount of capital, which is one of those other reasons you have to go elsewhere, because you don't only have to build, you got to compete, right? And then that becomes the other part. It can't just be who's got the best team, it's who's got the best infrastructure. Who's got the security? Who's got the compliance in place? Who can I depend on? All these things are money related. So the conversation is not just about funding. It's not just about contracts. We also need to think about competitors too. You think about a company that we have to support in Michigan, we also need to look at the landscape of who they got to fight against, right? And we realize that, hey, that company's going to need a lot of support. We don't have it in Michigan. We better tap Indiana. We better tap Ohio. So, yeah, I think it's a lot to say on that.
You just said something that I want to put on the table again. You mentioned your DEI exchange. We want to talk about Black founders. Have there been moments where your company or leadership was underestimated?
Every doggone day. Every day. But that's okay. You can underestimate to your peril. But I think, having everything lined up so you can compete, so you can go on scale. So I'll give you an example. We're deep in the manufacturing development process. What are our trifecta of manufacturing process partners look like for our product? That's work. Can we do it in state, or do we have to go down to Georgia because they gave us a better package? I'd rather do it here. That this is a business. This is not a friend I'm trying to a friendship I'm trying to build. No, this is real world. So the dollars and cents make sense, and having all those things that Justin mentioned in order. Timing is critical. Your backdoor infrastructure, in our case, manufacturing partners. Working with the federal government contracts to get them what that requires more than a 15-member team. So how do I build that team to 30? I can cross the rest of the boxes. Well, that requires upfront capital. Right? And we're underestimated. We have all the tools. We will win. There's no doubt. It's just, can we do it in an efficient, quick manner that meets the efforts of our competitors? And that's always in question.
So timing and speed play and that's where it can have an impact.
If we're slow to product development, we're done. We just got into the drone space. Well, how do you get into drone space on battery safety monitoring technologies, where we're moving into monitoring packaging for cold storage, blood, organs, which doesn't exist. But we can export our technology to meet that end. As a matter of fact, we've done it already. We just have to sky test it, literally sky test it. Also looking for those next opportunities. I have the core of what I do. What adjacencies exist for us? I know you have a lot. I think about your company all the time. You can go into many different directions.
Think about us a little bit more. Let me know if you come up with something.
You have great flexibility to do a lot of things.
We do.
And I think that's important too.
I think, getting back to underestimation as a founder. Listen, I am leading a multi-million-dollar biotech company. And most of the time I show up like this. And nobody thinks I'm leading this company. And so I walk in the room, half the time I get off on being underestimated. I actually like it. I like it. Because I want to shock you. I want you to be shocked. But where it's not it's not as much fun is when I'm going through a lot of the funding exercises or going through a lot of the partnership. I have to prove 10 times over what people don't look like me don't have to prove. And I'm not just fighting the race battle. I'm fighting the gender battle as well, because it is mostly white male leaders in this space. So for underestimated, CEO state, I think it's just knowing what you're up against. And my way of handling that is to actually welcome it. Again, I like it. I use it to my advantage, because if you underestimate me, that means I'm just going to blow your mind anyway.
Yeah, I think being underestimated, it could be a benefit in some way, especially us still early stage. So you haven't raised those millions, but be able to focus. So if you're not believing in us now, then I'm not gonna force the relationship, because there are people that believe in us and will work with us. So I think it's kind of maintaining the focus, kind of weeding out those who aren't you right now. They're just in a later stage when other people come on board. So
how do you feel about being a Black woman in science? This is what we have in common. So you're in the spaces I'm in. How does that land with you?
Yeah, so it gives me a little bit of more credibility in a way, because people trust me. But at the same time, because I am in science but don't have that business background, then people might not believe that I can even run a company. Because I think I hear it's a lot actually that VCs don't believe that scientists can run companies. So
That is it.
so yeah.
It's a caught.
So, and this goes to the landscape just about kind of DEI and color. I remember I like to bring everything full circle with history. I remember post bankruptcy, I was on a project. DMC was spending $1 billion to expand their hospital, and I can remember City of Detroit had a mandate where you had to use X amount of percentage of Detroiters, which ended up being like laborers and operators or whatnot, or you got penalized. And I can remember I was the only Black person in a meeting, and I can remember one of the white counterpart got up, and he was concerned. He said, "Where am I supposed to find out the flight?" Was what he said. A little bit was like, I'm like, yeah. And I can remember that. And then I remember George Floyd. I remember I was fundraising during George Floyd. The amount of venture people who came to me and said, "We support Black founders." Like that was how the open mind. We support Black founders. And it became just like a afterthought. It was like almost like this is what you're saying, because if you ask them about the numbers, there was no numbers. It was just like, this was cheery. This wasn't like infrastructure. And the only company that said that we believed in was the one that actually had the number to show that, hey, this is our success rate. This is what we do when you invest in us. And we primarily invest in minorities, but we show this kind of conversion rate for success. At the end of the day, we can all talk about our shortcomings. I know we can all talk about our shortcomings. We come from a lot of backgrounds where venture is not mentioned. We come from a lot of backgrounds where conversations about mergers are not called. We don't have these conversations till we got here. But one of my colleagues said it best when I was out in San Francisco for Culture Trip Weekend, and I asked a question to him. This is a brother from Detroit. I won't say his name, but he went to Harvard, had his own fund, and he ran out of money. He wanted to invest in our first company, and I said, how can somebody like you with that type of credentials run out of money? He said, you got to understand this industry. Greed outweighs bias, right? There's a lot of bias here, but greed outweighs it. What that told me was, there's a lot of people who don't believe Black founders can succeed. Like the numbers prove it out. Statistics back it. 0% of executives at companies are minorities in companies, $0 to $20 million. 0%. Meaning if you're an executive, you're in the 0%. But then there's an uptick. And the reality is that, yeah, it's tough. It's bad. It's bad. But at some point, you got to just become undeniable, right? And when you become undeniable, you control the destiny. So I've always said, man, it's a tough shake. We don't get the same opportunities. We don't necessarily look at the same way. We are always questioned. We're always going to be second guessed. We're always going to be all of these things until we're not. Right?
Well, and I'll say this, and I know I've said this to you before, Dawn, that I try not to focus on the 0%, because if you do, you'll just count yourself out. So I say, who's in that 0%? Is it like 0.5%? Great. Who are those women? Who are those men? Let me talk to them, and then maybe we can get that number up to 1. And I think you have to have that mentality, because if not, we'll be stuck there.
Right. 100%.
And yet all of you are here.
Yeah.
And all of you are building, which we are super excited about. So as we begin to close, I want to ask you 2 questions. One, given everything we said, what do we need to double down on, if you will, here? And where are you most optimistic?
I think we need to double down on the trifecta of founders, funders, and infrastructure. And I think all 3 need review and contribution. And I think it takes thinking outside of the box, for lack of a better term, to really change and shape us into the type of state we want to be and to be able to compete. What's the second question?
Where are you most optimistic?
Oh, I'm most optimistic in being innovative and really changing the way that this state looks at how we contribute to biotechnology. So for me, it's about an emerging industry that has always we're here. Biotech's not new to Michigan, but boy, could we really land on the map in a very different way. So I'm so optimistic about not just my company, Brittany's company. I could name probably 10 biotech companies that I am just stoked about. So I'm excited to see what we do there.
All right, Ron.
We need to consistently engage with each other from a mentor-mentee perspective. Justin, you said something that was so poignant. It's related to legacy. We don't have 3 to 4 generations of people pulling you by the ear and saying, no, you're going to do this way. You're going to do this. No, but I want to do that. No, you're going to do this. And the opportunity to mentor is important. The opportunity to be a mentor, a mentee is equally as important. I am both. And I relish both positions I think we need more of that. I think we need to dig deeply and identify, the folks in our community who are willing. Someone once told me, I am my brother's keeper if my brother wants to be kept. And that sticks with me on a daily basis.
I've not heard that. I like that.
And they have to make a decision. So that's what I'm excited about as well. The opportunity to both be a mentor or a mentee. And we all should relish that opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll throw one in there, mentee to having a mentor as in the younger generation, because we can learn from them.
Every day.
Sometimes we think it's the other way around.
Great point.
But I want my mentor to be, someone who's from that next generation, so that we can learn. Brittanie.
So yeah, that's a really good question. I think kind of what Crystal is saying, like I think the first time we met each other was talking about, okay, how can where can biotech companies even build within Detroit? Is there a lab space? Like what's going on here?
It was lab space. I think that's why we did start. Yes.
So trying to scope out what that would look like. How can you do shared lab space, that sort of thing. And so, but with so many biotech startups, there's so many water tech now is getting big. So seeing the potential of what can happen here in Michigan, I think we take for granted where we're actually situated within the U.S. We have the Great Lakes, we have the most diverse agricultural resources, we have all this land that can be used to pilot out these different solutions. So really optimistic about people realizing what we have and what we can take advantage of, and the amount of innovation that can happen here that can then spread globally, because we're really at this we're a rare state. You can't repeat Michigan anywhere else.
And we can cross industries because of it. Think of biotech, ag tech, climate tech, it all.
Yeah, we're so diverse here. So that's what I'm most optimistic about, is that potential. And then I definitely think, going back, hopefully the funding landscape does change. I think for us early startups, the influx of reimbursable grants, those type of things are a little bit difficult to navigate. So hopefully that changes as well with the funding landscape. But yeah, overall, just really optimistic about the potential.
I would say, what would I like to see us double down on? I would love to see more conversations about innovation be treated like a meritocracy. I think the idea that we have this mentality that everybody needs to win. That's not the reality. There are very few companies that's successful. And I think it's really important for us to find those people who are the ones that we want to back. I'm fine with having tough conversations. Justin, you're not in. We want to, Ron is the guy. Let's back Ron. That's fine. Crystal is the woman. Brittany is the woman. Let's back. But then let's be honest and say, hey, this type of company is going to retire, this type of resources, and we need to help do everything in our power for them to hit this amount of revenue, this amount of patents over this time. We're not reinventing the wheel, but let's have conversations about really supporting the ones that are right for being supported. Because what I don't like is this everybody gets a trophy mentality, because hey, it's Justin, $5,000 checks don't help everybody, right? They don't. So let's stop pretending that $5,000 is real innovation. Let's support companies. Let's set up companies for success, because if you read the greats, I read the book about Super Pump, Uber, and if you talk to, and there's many of them, but if you talk to the CEO of Twilio, who came out of Michigan, he was very successful because Uber was very successful. So there's this idea that if Ron wins and he blows up, there's going to be other companies that are successful as a result. Not give Ron less so we can give these other people a little bit. And I think more of us should have conversations from the venture angle. Hey, every business is not venture back, so let's not back every business like a venture. Let's have a conversation about who are we going to set up the infrastructure to get the contract,
the employees
to succeed.
And,
how much money does this company need? How much money can we make sure this company has? Because we want them to be successful, because they have all the characteristics. Let's have a conversation about not making this a participation game, but let's make it a winning game. And if one of us wins, the likelihood is that we'll learn how to win from the one. We won't learn how to win from the 5K, right? So I want to double down and have more conversation on that. I would say what I'm optimistic about is I'm sitting here in Newlab. I'm in Michigan Central. It's a Friday afternoon. I'm with a group of talented, entrepreneurs, and Dara, who's been a mentor of mine for several.
I was on the caller.
For several years now. We met back when she was, with Tech Town, and we all know the story about how you introduced me.
Well, hold on. Can we just double down on that? Because I think we've talked about us, but we have not talked about Dawn Batts. And I think we would be remiss if we don't talk about having someone like her in our ecosystem. She don't want to hear it.
Under the bus.
Let me take over for a second. We talk about the power of mentorship and menteeship. So I met Dawn when I started my first company, which failed, which is how I got to CircNova. It's because of people like Dawn Batts in this ecosystem that people like us can sit around this table. And I know she's been impactful to each one of us. So when we talk about Ron, which you said that you like to see more of mentor-mentee, I think it's really important, Dawn, that you are always looking for the next Ron, Brittanie, Crystal, and Justin, because your belief in us, for real, it helps us like have the courage. It inspires us. The way that you've had access to capital, the way that you've understood venture from many years is what we need specifically in our community, because we don't get that at home. Most of us are hearing for the first time what venture is when we want to start. These companies. So thank you for your mentorship.
I would say very, very much appreciated. And I would say I'm optimistic that I know you're having more of these conversations, not just with us, but at the state level, at other state levels, at the private sector. And if we have more of these conversations that have real conversations about what the ecosystem needs, I think we'll see a lot more change. And before, we weren't having these conversations. We were having them, at the coffee, with free coffee with Ron. Now, we're having them with a camera in front of it. And like the reality is that, Detroit has a great opportunity, but we have a long path ahead of us. And having these conversations, putting these things in action is a step in the right direction. So I appreciate you and individuals like you for putting this together. And looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today for this very important conversation. And thank you all for joining the Detroit Founders Roundtable.